If you're worried about debt, you're not alone. Islam has clear advice to help you. Let's break it down together. In Islam, loans should be repaid honestly and on time. If someone can't pay due to hardship, we're taught to give them more time or even forgive the debt. Debt can be transferred to others with everyone's agreement. The Prophet Muhammad reminded us, always act with fairness and kindness in money matters. Volume 3, Book 41, number 570. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. While I was in the company of the Prophet in one of his ghazawat, he asked, "What is wrong with your camel? Will you sell it?" I replied in the affirmative and sold it to him. When he reached Medina, I took the camel to him in the morning and he paid me its price. Volume 3, Book 41, number 571, narrated by Al-Amash. When we were with Ibrahim, we talked about mortgaging in deals of salam. Ibrahim narrated from Aswad that Aisha had said, the Prophet bought some foodstuff on credit from a Jew and mortgaged an iron armor to him. Volume 3, Book 41, number 572, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, whoever takes the money of the people with the intention of repaying it, Allah will repay it on his behalf, and whoever takes it in order to spoil it, then Allah will spoil him. Volume 3, Book 41, number 573, narrated by Abu Dar. Once, while I was in the company of the Prophet, he saw the mountain of Uhud and said, I would not like to have this mountain turned into gold for me unless nothing of it, not even a single dinar remains of it with me for more than 3 days. That is, I will spend all of it in Allah's cause, except that dinar which I will keep for repaying debts. Then he said, those who are rich in this world would have little reward in the hereafter, except those who spend their money here and there in Allah's cause, and they are few in number. Then he ordered me to stay at my place and went not far away. I heard a voice and intended to go to him, but I remembered his order, stay at your place till I return. On his return I said, O Allah's apostle, what was that noise which I heard? He said, did you hear anything? I said, yes. He said, Gabriel came and said to me, whoever amongst your followers dies worshipping none along with Allah will enter paradise. I said, even if he did such and such things, that is, even if he stole or committed illegal sexual intercourse. He said, yes. Volume 3, Book 41, number 574, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, if I had gold equal to the mountain of Uhud, it would not please me that it should remain with me for more than 3 days, except an amount which I would keep for repaying debts. Volume 3, Book 41, number 575, narrated by Abu Huraira. A man demanded his debts from Allah's apostle in such a rude manner that the companions of the Prophet intended to harm him. But the Prophet said, leave him no doubt, for he, the creditor, has the right to demand it, harshly. Buy a camel and give it to him. They said, the camel that is available is older than the camel he demands. The Prophet said, buy it and give it to him, for the best among you are those who repay their debts handsomely. Volume 3, Book 41, number 576, narrated by Hudhaifa. I heard the Prophet saying, once a man died and was asked, what did you use to say or do in your lifetime? He replied, I was a businessman and used to give time to the rich to repay his debt and used to deduct part of the debt of the poor. So he was forgiven his sins. Abu Masud said, I heard the same hadith from the Prophet. Volume 3, Book 41, number 577, narrated by Abu Huraira. A man came to the Prophet and demanded a camel. The Prophet owed him. Allah's apostle told his companions to give him a camel. They said, we do not find except an older camel than what he demands. The Prophet ordered them to give him that camel. The man said, you have paid me in full, and may Allah also pay you in full. Allah's apostle said, give him, for the best amongst the people is he who repays his debts in the most handsome manner. Volume 3, Book 41, number 578, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet owed a camel of a certain age to a man who came to demand it back. The Prophet ordered his companions to give him. They looked for a camel of the same age but found nothing but a camel 1 year older. The Prophet told them to give it to him. The man said, you have paid me in full, and may Allah pay you in full. The Prophet said, the best amongst you is he who pays his debts in the most handsome manner. Volume 3, Book 41, number 579, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. I went to the Prophet while he was in the mosque. Mizar thinks that Jabir went in the forenoon. After the Prophet told me to pray 2 rakat, he repaid me the debt he owed me and gave me an extra amount. Volume 3, Book 41, number 580, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. My father was martyred on the day of the Battle of Uhud, and he was in debt. His creditors demanded their rights persistently. I went to the Prophet and informed him about it. He told them to take the fruits of my garden and exempt my father from the debts, but they refused to do so. So, the Prophet did not give them my garden and told me that he would come to me the next morning. He came to us early in the morning and wandered among the date palms and invoked Allah to bless their fruits. I then plucked the dates and paid the creditors, and there remained some of the dates for us. Volume 3, Book 41, number 581, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. When my father died, he owed a Jew 30 ausuk of dates. I requested him to give me respite for repaying, but he refused. I requested Allah's apostle to intercede with the Jew. Allah's apostle went to the Jew and asked him to accept the fruits of my trees in place of the debt, but the Jew refused. Allah's apostle entered the garden of the date palms, wandering among the trees, and ordered me, saying, "Pluck the fruits and give him his due." So I plucked the fruits for him after the departure of Allah's apostle, and gave his 30 ausuk, and still had 17 ausuk extra for myself. Jabir said, I went to Allah's apostle to inform of what had happened, but found him praying the Asr prayer. After the prayer, I told him about the extra fruits which remained. Allah's apostle told me to inform Umar ibn al-Khattab about it. When I went to Umar and told him about it, Umar said, When Allah's apostle walked in your garden, I was sure that Allah would definitely bless it. Volume 3, Book 41, number 582, narrated by Aisha. Allah's apostle used to invoke Allah in the prayer saying, O Allah, I seek refuge with you from all sins and from being in debt. Someone said, O Allah's apostle, I see you. Very often you seek refuge with Allah from being in debt. He replied, If a person is in debt, he tells lies when he speaks and breaks his promises when he promises. Volume 3, Book 41, number 583, narrated by Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, If someone leaves some property, it will be for the inheritors, and if he leaves some weak offspring, it will be for us to support them. Volume 3, Book 41, number 584, narrated by Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, I am closer to the believers than themselves in this world and in the hereafter, and if you like, you can read Allah's statement. The Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves. 33.6. So, if a true believer dies and leaves behind some property, it will be for his inheritors, from the father's side. And if he leaves behind some debt to be paid or needy offspring, then they should come to me as I am the guardian of the deceased. Volume 3, Book 41, number 585, narrated by Abu Hurairah. Allah's apostle said, Procrastination, delay, in repaying debts by a wealthy person is injustice. Volume 3, Book 41, number 586, narrated by Abu Hurairah. A man came to the Prophet and demanded his debts and used harsh words. The companions of the Prophet wanted to harm him, but the Prophet said, Leave him, as the creditor, owner of the right, has the right to speak. Volume 3, Book 41, number 587, narrated by Abu Hurairah. Allah's apostle said, If a man finds his very things with a bankrupt, he has more right to take them back than anyone else. Volume 3, Book 41, number 588, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. A man pledged that his slave would be manumitted after his death. The Prophet asked, Who will buy the slave from me? Noaim bin Abdullah bought the slave, and the Prophet took its price and gave it to the owner. Volume 3, Book 41, number 589, narrated by Jabir. When Abdullah, my father, died, he left behind children and debts. I asked the lenders to put down some of his debt, but they refused. So I went to the Prophet to intercede with them, yet they refused. The Prophet said to me, Classify your dates into their different kinds. Adk bin Zaid, Lean and Ajwa, each kind alone, and call all the creditors and wait till I come to you. I did so, and the Prophet came and sat beside the dates and started measuring to each his due, till he paid them fully, and the amount of dates remained as it was before, as if he had not touched them. On another occasion, I took part in one of Ghazawat among with the Prophet, and I was riding one of our camels. The camel got tired and was lagging behind the others. The Prophet hit it on its back. He said, Sell it to me, and you have the right to ride it till Medina. When we approached Medina, I took the permission from the Prophet to go to my house, saying, O Allah's apostle, I have newly married. The Prophet asked, Have you married a virgin or a matron, a widow or divorcee? I said, I have married a matron, as Abdullah, my father, died and left behind daughters small in their ages, so I married a matron who may teach them and bring them up with good manners. The Prophet then said to me, "Go to your family." When I went there and told my maternal uncle about the selling of the camel, he admonished me for it. On that I told him about its slowness and exhaustion, and about what the Prophet had done to the camel and his hitting it. When the Prophet arrived, I went to him with the camel in the morning, and he gave me its price, the camel itself, and my share from the war booty as he gave the other people. Volume 3, Book 41, number 590, narrated by Ibn Umar. A man came to the Prophet and said, "I am often betrayed in bargaining." The Prophet advised him, "When you buy something, say to the seller, 'No deception.'" The man used to say so afterwards. Volume 3, Book 41, number 591, narrated by Al-Mughira bin Shuba. The Prophet said, "Allah has forbidden for you, 1. To be undutiful to your mothers, 2. To bury your daughters alive, 3. To not to pay the rights of the others, for example, charity, etc., and 4. To beg of men, begging. And Allah has hated for you, 1. Vain, useless talk, or that you talk too much about others, 2. To ask too many questions in disputed religious matters, and 3. To waste the wealth, by extravagance." Volume 3, Book 41, number 592, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. I heard Allah's Apostle saying, "Every one of you is a guardian and responsible for what is in his custody. The ruler is a guardian of his subjects and responsible for them. A husband is a guardian of his family and is responsible for it. A lady is a guardian of her husband's house and is responsible for it, and a servant is a guardian of his master's property and is responsible for it." I heard that from Allah's Apostle, and I think that the Prophet also said, "A man is a guardian of his father's property and is responsible for it, so all of you are guardians and responsible for your wards and things under your care." Volume 3, Book 41, number 593, narrated by Abdullah. I heard a man reciting a verse of the Holy Quran, but I had heard the Prophet reciting it differently. So I caught hold of the man by the hand and took him to Allah's Apostle, who said, "Both of you are right." Shuba, the sub-narrator, said, "I think he said to them, 'Don't differ, for the nations before you differed and perished, because of their differences.'" Volume 3, Book 41, number 594, narrated by Abu Huraira. Two persons, a Muslim and a Jew, quarreled. The Muslim said, "By him who gave Muhammad superiority over all the people." The Jew said, "By him who gave Moses superiority over all the people." At that the Muslim raised his hand and slapped the Jew on the face. The Jew went to the Prophet and informed him of what had happened between him and the Muslim. The Prophet sent for the Muslim and asked him about it. The Muslim informed him of the event. The Prophet said, "Do not give me superiority over Moses, for on the day of resurrection all the people will fall unconscious and I will be one of them, but I will be the first to gain consciousness, and will see Moses standing and holding the side of the throne of Allah. I will not know whether Moses has also fallen unconscious and got up before me, or Allah has exempted him from that stroke." Volume 3, Book 41, number 595, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. While Allah's Apostle was sitting, a Jew came and said, "O Abul Qasim, one of your companions has slapped me on my face." The Prophet asked who that was. He replied that he was one of the Ansar. The Prophet sent for him, and on his arrival he asked him whether he had beaten the Jew. He replied in the affirmative and said, "I heard him taking an oath in the market saying, 'By him who gave Moses superiority over all the human beings.' I said, 'O wicked man, has Allah given Moses superiority? Even over Muhammad I became furious and slapped him over his face." The Prophet said, "Do not give a prophet superiority over another, for on the day of resurrection all the people will fall unconscious, and I will be the first to emerge from the earth and will see Moses standing and holding one of the legs of the throne. I will not know whether Moses has fallen unconscious or the first unconsciousness was sufficient for him." Volume 3, Book 41, number 596, narrated by Anas. A Jew crushed the head of a girl between two stones. The girl was asked who had crushed her head, and some names were mentioned before her, and when the name of the Jew was mentioned, she nodded, agreeing. The Jew was captured, and when he confessed, the Prophet ordered that his head be crushed between two stones. Volume 3, Book 41, number 597, narrated by Ibn Umar. A man was often cheated in buying. The Prophet said to him, "When you buy something, say to the seller, 'No cheating.'" The man used to say so thenceforward. Volume 3, Book 41, number 598, narrated by Jabir. A man manumitted a slave, and he had no other property than that, so the Prophet cancelled the manumission and sold the slave for him. Noaim bin al-Naham bought the slave from him. Volume 3, Book 41, number 599, narrated by Abdullah bin Masud. Allah's apostle said, "Whoever takes a false oath so as to take the property of a Muslim, illegally, will meet Allah while he will be angry with him." Al-Ashath said, "By Allah, that saying concerned me. I had common land with a Jew, and the Jew later on denied my ownership. So I took him to the Prophet, who asked me whether I had a proof of my ownership. When I replied in the negative, the Prophet asked the Jew to take an oath. I said, 'O Allah's apostle, he will take an oath and deprive me of my property.' So Allah revealed the following verse, 'Verily, those who purchase a little gain at the cost of Allah's covenant and their oaths.' 3.77. Volume 3, Book 41, number 600, narrated by Abdullah bin Ka'b bin Malik Ka'b, demanded his debt back from Ibn Abi Hadrad in the mosque, and their voices grew louder till Allah's apostle heard them while he was in his house. He came out to them, raising the curtain of his room, and addressed Ka'b, 'O Ka'b.' Ka'b replied, 'Labaik, O Allah's apostle.' He said to him, 'Reduce your debt to 1/2, gesturing with his hand. Ka'b said, 'I have done so, O Allah's apostle.' On that, the Prophet said to Ibn Abi Hadrad, 'Get up and repay the debt to him.' Volume 3, Book 41, number 601, narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. I heard Hisham bin Hakim bin Hizam reciting Surat al-Furqan in a way different to that of mine. Allah's apostle had taught it to me in a different way. So, I was about to quarrel with him during the prayer, but I waited till he finished. Then I tied his garment round his neck and seized him by it and brought him to Allah's apostle and said, 'I have heard him reciting Surat al-Furqan in a way different to the way you taught it to me.' The Prophet ordered me to release him and asked Hisham to recite it. When he recited it, Allah's apostle said, 'It was revealed in this way.' He then asked me to recite it. When I recited it, he said, 'It was revealed in this way.' The Quran has been revealed in 7 different ways, so recite it in the way that is easier for you. Volume 3, Book 41, number 602, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, 'No doubt I intended to order somebody to pronounce the Iqama of the compulsory congregational prayer, and then I would go to the houses of those who do not attend the prayer and burn their houses over them.' Volume 3, Book 41, number 603, narrated by Aisha Abu bin Zama and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, carried the case of their claim of the ownership of the son of a slave girl of Zama before the Prophet. Sa'd said, 'O Allah's apostle, my brother before his death told me that when I would return to Mecca, I should search for the son of the slave girl of Zama and take him into my custody as he was his son.' Abu bin Zama said, 'Thee is my brother and the son of the slave girl of my father, and was born o'er my father's bed.' The Prophet noticed a resemblance between Utbah and the boy, but he said, 'O Abu bin Zama, you will get this boy, as the son goes to the owner of the bed. You, Sauda, screen yourself from the boy.' Volume 3, Book 41, number 604, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle sent horsemen to Najd, and they arrested and brought a man called Thumama bin Uthal, the chief of Yamama, and they fastened him to one of the pillars of the mosque. When Allah's apostle came up to him, he asked, 'What have you to say, O Thumama?' He replied, 'I have good news, O Muhammad.' Abu Huraira narrated the whole narration, which ended with the order of the Prophet, 'Release him.' Volume 3, Book 41, number 605, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet sent some horsemen to Najd, and they arrested and brought a man called Thumama bin Uthal from the tribe of Bani Hanifa, and they fastened him to one of the pillars of the mosque. Volume 3, Book 41, number 606, narrated by Abdullah bin Ka'b bin Malik al-Ansari from Ka'b bin Malik, that Abdullah bin Abi Hadrad al-Islami owed him some debt. Ka'b met him and caught hold of him, and they started talking, and their voices grew loudest. The Prophet passed by them and addressed Ka'b, pointing out to him to reduce the debt to 1/2. So Ka'b got 1/2 of the debt and exempted the debtor from the other half. Volume 3, Book 41, number 607, narrated by Kabab. I was a blacksmith in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, and Asi bin Wail owed me some money. I went to him to demand it, but he said to me, 'I will not pay you unless you reject faith in Muhammad.' I replied, By Allah, I will never disbelieve Muhammad till Allah let you die and then resurrect you. He said, Then wait till I die and come to life again, for then I will be given property and offspring and will pay your right. So thus revelation came. Have you seen him who disbelieved in our signs and yet says, I will be given property and offspring? 19.77. Volume 3, Book 37, number 486, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Procrastination, delay, in paying debts by a wealthy man is injustice. So if your debt is transferred from your debtor to a rich debtor, you should agree. Volume 3, Book 37, number 487, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Procrastination, delay, in paying debts by a wealthy person is injustice. So, if your debt is transferred from your debtor to a rich debtor, you should agree. Volume 3, Book 37, number 488, narrated by Salama bin al-Aqwa. Once, while we were sitting in the company of Prophet, a dead man was brought. The Prophet was requested to lead the funeral prayer for the deceased. He said, Is he in debt? The people replied in the negative. He said, Has he left any wealth? They said no. So he led his funeral prayer. Another dead man was brought, and the people said, O Allah's apostle, lead his funeral prayer. The Prophet said, Is he in debt? They said yes. He said, Has he left any wealth? They said, 3 dinars. So he led the prayer. Then a third dead man was brought, and the people said to the Prophet, Please lead his funeral prayer. He said, Has he left any wealth? They said no. He asked, Is he in debt? They said, Yes, he has to pay 3 dinars. He refused to pray and said, Then pray for your dead companion. Abu Qatada said, O Allah's apostle, lead his funeral prayer and I will pay his debt. So he led the prayer. Volume 3, Book 37, number 488, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, An Israeli man asked another Israeli to lend him 1,000 dinars. The second man required witnesses. The former replied, Allah is sufficient as a witness. The second said, I want a surety. The former replied, Allah is sufficient as a surety. The second said, You're right, and lent him the money for a certain period. The debtor went across the sea. When he finished his job, he searched for a conveyance so that he might reach in time for the repayment of the debt, but he could not find any. So he took a piece of wood and made a hole in it, inserted in it 1,000 dinars and a letter to the lender, and then closed, that is sealed, the hole tightly. He took the piece of wood to the sea and said, O Allah, you know well that I took a loan of 1,000 dinars from so-and-so. He demanded a surety from me, but I told him that Allah's guarantee was sufficient, and he accepted your guarantee. He then asked for a witness, and I told him that Allah was sufficient as a witness, and he accepted you as a witness. No doubt, I tried hard to find a conveyance so that I could pay his money, but could not find, so I hand over this money to you. Saying that, he threw the piece of wood into the sea till it went out far into it, and then he went away. Meanwhile, he started searching for a conveyance in order to reach the creditor's country. One day the lender came out of his house to see whether a ship had arrived bringing his money, and all of a sudden he saw the piece of wood in which his money had been deposited. He took it home to use for fire. When he sawed it, he found his money and the letter inside it. Shortly after that, the debtor came bringing 1,000 dinars to him and said, By Allah, I had been trying hard to get a boat so that I could bring you your money, but failed to get one before the one I have come by. The lender asked, Have you sent something to me? The debtor replied, I have told you I could not get a boat other than the one I have come by. The lender said, Allah has delivered on your behalf the money you sent in the piece of wood, so you may keep your 1,000 dinars and depart guided on the right path. Volume 3, Book 37, number 489, narrated by Sayyid bin Jubair ibn Abbas said, in the verse, To everyone we have appointed, Muwaliya means one's heirs, 4.33, and regarding the verse, and those with whom your right hands have made a pledge. Ibn Abbas said, When the emigrants came to the Prophet in Medina, the emigrant would inherit the Ansari, while the latter's relatives would not inherit him because of the bond of brotherhood which the Prophet established between them, that is, the emigrants and the Ansar. When the verse, And to everyone we have appointed heirs, 4.33, was revealed, it cancelled the bond, the pledge of brotherhood regarding inheritance. Then he said, The verse, To those also to whom your right hands have pledged, remained valid regarding cooperation and mutual advice, while the matter of inheritance was excluded, and it became permissible to assign something in one's testament to the person who had the right of inheriting before. Volume 3, Book 37, number 490, narrated by Anas Abdurrahman. Bin Auf came to us, and Allah's apostle established a bond of brotherhood between him and Sa'd bin Rabi'a. Volume 3, Book 37, number 491, narrated by Asim. I heard Anas bin Malik, "Have you ever heard that the Prophet said, 'There is no alliance in Islam'?" He replied, "The Prophet made alliance between Quraysh and the Ansar in my house." Volume 3, Book 37, number 492, narrated by Salama bin al-Aqwa. A dead person was brought to the Prophet so that he might lead the funeral prayer for him. He asked, "Is he in debt?" When the people replied in the negative, he led the funeral prayer. Another dead person was brought and he asked, "Is he in debt?" They said, "Yes." He refused to lead the prayer and said, "Lead the prayer of your friend." Abu Qatada said, "O Allah's apostle, I undertake to pay his debt." Allah's apostle then led his funeral prayer. Volume 3, Book 37, number 493, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. Once the Prophet said to me, "If the money of Bahrain comes, I will give you a certain amount of it." The Prophet had breathed his last before the money of Bahrain arrived. When the money of Bahrain reached, Abu Bakr announced, "Whoever was promised by the Prophet should come to us." I went to Abu Bakr and said, "The Prophet promised me so and so." Abu Bakr gave me a handful of coins, and when I counted them, they were 500 in number. Abu Bakr then said, "Take twice the amount you have taken, besides." Volume 3, Book 37, number 494, narrated by Aisha, wife of the Prophet. Since I reached the age when I could remember things, I have seen my parents worshipping according to the right faith of Islam. Not a single day passed, but Allah's apostle visited us both in the morning and in the evening. When the Muslims were persecuted, Abu Bakr set out for Ethiopia as an emigrant. When he reached a place called Bark al-Gimad, he met Ibn ad-Daghna, the chief of the Kara tribe, who asked Abu Bakr, "Where are you going?" Abu Bakr said, "My people have turned me out of the country and I would like to tour the world and worship my Lord." Ibn ad-Daghna said, "A man like you will not go out, nor will he be turned out as you help the poor earn their living, keep good relation with your kith and kin, help the disabled or the dependents, provide guests with food and shelter, and help people during their troubles. I am your protector, so go back and worship your Lord at your home." Ibn ad-Daghna went along with Abu Bakr and took him to the chiefs of Quraysh, saying to them, "A man like Abu Bakr will not go out, nor will he be turned out. Do you turn out a man who helps the poor earn their living, keeps good relations with kith and kin, helps the disabled, provides guests with food and shelter, and helps the people during their troubles?" So Quraysh allowed Ibn ad-Daghna's guarantee of protection and told Abu Bakr that he was secure, and said to Ibn ad-Daghna, "Advise Abu Bakr to worship his Lord in his house and to pray and read what he liked, and not to hurt us and not to do these things publicly, for we fear that our sons and women may follow him." Ibn ad-Daghna told Abu Bakr of all that, so Abu Bakr continued worshipping his Lord in his house and did not pray or recite Quran aloud except in his house. Later on, Abu Bakr had an idea of building a mosque in the courtyard of his house. He fulfilled that idea and started praying and reciting Quran there publicly. The women and the offspring of the pagans started gathering around him and looking at him astonishingly. Abu Bakr was a soft-hearted person and could not help weeping while reciting Quran. This horrified the pagan chiefs of Quraysh. They sent for Ibn ad-Daghna, and when he came, they said, "We have given Abu Bakr protection on condition that he will worship his Lord in his house, but he has transgressed that condition and has built a mosque in the courtyard of his house and offered his prayer and recited Quran in public. We are afraid lest he mislead our women and offspring. So go to him and tell him that if he wishes he can worship his Lord in his house only, and if not, then tell him to return your pledge of protection, as we do not like to betray you by revoking your pledge, nor can we tolerate Abu Bakr's public declaration of Islam, his worshipping." Aisha added, Ibn ad-Daghna came to Abu Bakr and said, "You know the conditions on which I gave you protection, so you should either abide by those conditions or revoke my protection, as I do not like to hear the Arabs saying that Ibn ad-Daghna gave the pledge of protection to a person and his people did not respect it." Abu Bakr said, "I revoke your pledge of protection and am satisfied with Allah's protection." At that time, Allah's apostle was still in Mecca, and he said to his companions, "Your place of emigration has been shown to me. I have seen salty land, planted with date palms and situated between two mountains, which are the two Haras." So, when the Prophet told it, some of the companions migrated to Medina. and some of those who had migrated to Ethiopia returned to Medina. When Abu Bakr prepared for emigration, Allah's apostle said to him, "Wait, for I expect to be permitted to emigrate." Abu Bakr asked, "May my father be sacrificed for your sake? Do you really expect that?" Allah's apostle replied in the affirmative. So Abu Bakr postponed his departure in order to accompany Allah's apostle and fed 2 camels which he had, with the leaves of samur trees for 4 months. Volume 3, Book 37, number 495. Narrated by Abu Hurairah. Whenever a dead man in debt was brought to Allah's apostle, he would ask, "Has he left anything to repay his debt?" If he was informed that he had left something to repay his debts, he would offer his funeral prayer. Otherwise, he would tell the Muslims to offer their friends' funeral prayer. When Allah made the Prophet wealthy through conquests, he said, "I am more rightful than other believers to be the guardian of the believers, so if a Muslim dies while in debt, I am responsible for the repayment of his debt, and whoever leaves wealth after his death, it will belong to his heirs." Volume 3, Book 35, number 441. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Allah's apostle came to Medina, and the people used to pay in advance the price of fruits to be delivered within 1 or 2 years. The sub-narrator is in doubt whether it was 1 to 2 years or 2 to 3 years. The Prophet said, "Whoever pays money in advance for dates to be delivered later should pay it for known specified weight and measure of the dates." Volume 3, Book 35, number 442, narrated by Ibn Abi Naji, as above, mentioning only specific measure. Volume 3, Book 35, number 443, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet came to Medina, and the people used to pay in advance the price of dates to be delivered within 2 or 3 years. He said to them, "Whoever pays in advance the price of a thing to be delivered later should pay it for a specified measure at specified weight for a specified period." Volume 3, Book 35, number 444, narrated by Ibn Abi Naji, as above, saying, he should pay the price in advance for a specified measure and for a specified period. Volume 3, Book 35, number 445, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet came to Medina, and he told the people, regarding the payment of money in advance, that they should pay it for a known specified measure and a known specified weight and a known specified period. Volume 3, Book 35, number 446, narrated by Shuba Muhammad or Abdullah bin Abu al-Mujalid said, Abdullah bin Shaddad and Abu Burda differed regarding as-salam, so they sent me to Ibn Abi Awfa and I asked him about it. He replied, "In the lifetime of Allah's apostle, Abu Bakr and Umar, we used to pay in advance the prices of wheat, barley, dried grapes, and dates to be delivered later." I also asked Ibn Abza and he too replied as above. Volume 3, Book 35, number 447, narrated by Muhammad bin al-Majalid. Abdullah bin Shaddad and Abu Burda sent me to Abdullah bin Abi Awfa and told me to ask Abdullah whether the people in the lifetime of the Prophet used to pay in advance for wheat, to be delivered later. Abdullah replied, "We used to pay in advance to the peasants of Sham for wheat, barley, and olive oil of a known specified measure to be delivered in a specified period." I asked him, was the price paid in advance to those who had the things to be delivered later? Abdullah bin Awfa replied, "We did not used to ask them about that." Then they sent me to Abdur Rahman bin Abza, and I asked him. He replied, "The companions of the Prophet used to practice salam in the lifetime of the Prophet, and we did not used to ask them whether they had standing crops or not." Volume 3, Book 35, number 448, narrated by Muhammad bin Abi al-Mujalid. As above, 446, and said, "We used to pay them in advance for wheat and barley to be delivered later," narrated Ash-Shaybani, and also for oil. Volume 3, Book 35, number 449, narrated by Ash-Shaybani, who said, "We used to pay in advance for wheat, barley, and dried grapes." Volume 3, Book 35, number 450, narrated by Abu Bakhtari, At-Tai. I asked Ibn Abbas about salam for the fruits of date palms. He replied, "The Prophet forbade the sale of dates on the trees till they became fit for eating and could be weighed." A man asked what to be weighed, as the dates were still on the trees. Another man sitting beside Ibn Abbas replied, "Till they are cut and stored," narrated Abu al-Bakhtari. I heard Ibn Abbas saying that the Prophet forbade, etc., as above. Volume 3, Book 35, number 451, narrated by Abu al-Bakhtari. I asked Ibn Umar about salam, the fruits of date palms. He replied, "The Prophet forbade the sale of dates till their benefit becomes evident and fit for eating, and also the sale of silver, for gold, on credit." I asked Ibn Abbas about salam for dates, and he replied, "The Prophet forbade the sale of dates till they were fit for eating and could be estimated." Volume 3, Book 35, number 452, narrated by Abu al-Bakhtari. I asked Ibn Umar about salam for dates. Ibn Umar replied, "The Prophet forbade the sale, the fruits of date palms, until they were fit for eating, and also forbade the sale of silver for gold on credit." I also asked Ibn Abbas about it. Ibn Abbas replied, "The Prophet forbade the sale of dates till they were fit for eating and could be weighed." I asked him, "What is to be weighed, as the dates are on the trees?" A man sitting by Ibn Abbas said, "It means till they are cut and stored." Volume 3, Book 35, number 453, narrated by Aisha, Allah's apostle, bought some foodstuff, barley, from a Jew on credit and mortgaged his iron armor to him. The armor stands for a guarantor. Volume 3, Book 35, number 454, narrated by Al-Amash. We argued at Ibrahim's dwelling place about mortgaging and salam. He said, Aisha said, "The Prophet bought some foodstuff from a Jew on credit, and the payment was to be made by a definite period, and he mortgaged his iron armor to him." Volume 3, Book 35, number 455, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet came to Medina, and the people used to pay in advance the prices of fruits to be delivered within 2 to 3 years. The Prophet said to them, "Buy fruits by paying their prices in advance on condition that the fruits are to be delivered to you according to a fixed specified measure within a fixed specified period." Ibn Naji said, "By specified measure and specified weight." Volume 3, Book 35, number 456, narrated by Muhammad bin Abi al-Mujalid Abu Burda, and Abdullah bin Shaddad sent me to Abdur Rahman bin Abza and Abdullah bin Abi Alfa to ask them about the salaf, salam. They said, "We used to get war booty while we were with Allah's apostle, and when the peasants of Sham came to us, we used to pay them in advance for wheat, barley, and oil to be delivered within a fixed period." I asked them, "Did the peasants own standing crops or not?" They replied, "We never asked them about it." Volume 3, Book 35, number 457, narrated by Abdullah. The people used to sell camels on the basis of Habal al-Habala. The Prophet forbade such sale. Nafi explained Habal al-Habala by saying, "The camel is to be delivered to the buyer after the she-camel gives birth." Volume 3, Book 35, number 458, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. Allah's apostle gave a verdict regarding shufa in every undivided joint thing, property. But if the limits are defined or demarcated, or the ways and streets are fixed, then there is no preemption. Volume 3, Book 35, number 459, narrated by Amr bin Ash-Sharid. While I was standing with Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, Al-Miswar bin Makrama came and put his hand on my shoulder. Meanwhile, Abu Rafi, the freed slave of the Prophet, came and asked Sa'd to buy from him the 2 dwellings which were in his house. Sa'd said, "By Allah, I will not buy them." Al-Miswar said, "By Allah, you shall buy them." Sa'd replied, "By Allah, I will not pay more than 4,000 dirhams by installments." Abu Rafi said, "I have been offered 500 dinars for it, and had I not heard the Prophet saying, 'The neighbor has more right than anyone else because of his nearness,' I would not give them to you for 4,000 dirhams, while I am offered 500 dinars, 1 dinar equals 10 dirhams, for them." So he sold it to Sa'd. Volume 3, Book 35, number 460, narrated by Aisha. I said, "O Allah's apostle, I have 2 neighbors and would like to know to which of them I should give presents." He replied, "To the one whose door is nearer to you." Volume 3, Book 38, number 496, narrated by Ali. Allah's apostle ordered me to distribute the saddles and skins of the budden which had slaughtered. Volume 3, Book 38, number 497, narrated by Uqba bin Amir, that the Prophet had given him sheep to distribute among his companions, and a male kid was left after the distribution. When he informed the Prophet of it, he said to him, "Offer it as a sacrifice on your behalf." Volume 3, Book 38, number 498, narrated by Abdur Rahman bin Auf. I got an agreement written between me and Umayyah bin Khalaf that Umayyah would look after my property, or family, in Mecca, and I would look after his in Medina. When I mentioned the word Ar-Rahman in the documents, Umayyah said, "I do not know Ar-Rahman. Write down to me your name, with which you called yourself, in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance." So I wrote my name, Abdu Amr. On the day of the battle of Badr, when all the people went to sleep, I went up the hill to protect him. Bilal, one, saw him, that is Umayyah, and went to a gathering of Ansar and said, "Here is Umayyah bin Khalaf, woe to me if he escapes." So a group of Ansar went out with Bilal to follow us, Abdurrahman and Umayyah. Being afraid that they would catch us, I left Umayyah's son for them to keep them busy, but the Ansar killed the son and insisted on following us. Umayyah was a fat man, and when they approached us, I told him to kneel down, and he knelt, and I laid myself on him to protect him. But the Ansar killed him by passing their swords underneath me, and one of them injured my foot with his sword. The sub-narrator said, Abdurrahman used to show us the trace of the wound on the back of his foot. Volume 3, Book 38, number 499, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri and Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle employed someone as a governor at Khaybar. When the man came to Medina, he brought with him dates called janib. The Prophet asked him, "Are all the dates of Khaybar of this kind?" The man replied, "No, we exchange 2 saws of bad dates for 1 saw of this kind of dates, that is janib, or exchange 3 saws for 2. On that, the Prophet said, "Don't do so, as it is a kind of usury, riba, but sell the dates of inferior quality for money and then buy janib with the money." The Prophet said the same thing about dates sold by weight. See Hadith number 506. Volume 3, Book 38, number 500. Narrated by Ibn Ka'b bin Malik from his father. We had some sheep which used to graze at Salah. One of our slave girls saw a sheep dying, and she broke a stone and slaughtered the sheep with it. My father said to the people, "Don't eat it till I ask the Prophet about it, or till I send somebody to ask the Prophet." So he asked or sent somebody to ask the Prophet, and the Prophet permitted him to eat it. Ubaidullah, a sub-narrator, said, "I admire that girl, for though she was a slave girl, she dared to slaughter the sheep." Volume 3, Book 38, number 501, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet owed somebody a camel of a certain age. When he came to demand it back, the Prophet said to some people, "Give him his due." When the people searched for a camel of that age, they found none, but found a camel 1 year older. The Prophet said, "Give it to him." On that, the man remarked, "You have given me my right in full. May Allah give you in full." The Prophet said, "The best amongst you is the one who pays the rights of others generously." Volume 3, Book 38, number 502, narrated by Abu Huraira. A man came to the Prophet demanding his debts and behaved rudely. The companions of the Prophet intended to harm him, but Allah's apostle said to them, "Leave him, for the creditor, that is owner of a right, has the right to speak." Allah's apostle then said, "Give him a camel of the same age as that of his." The people said, "O Allah's apostle, there is only a camel that is older than his." Allah's apostle said, "Give it to him, for the best amongst you is he who pays the rights of others handsomely." Volume 3, Book 38, number 503, narrated by Marwan bin al-Hakam and al-Miswar bin Makrama. When the delegates of the tribe of Hawazin, after embracing Islam, came to Allah's apostle, he got up. They appealed to him to return their properties and their captives. Allah's apostle said to them, "The most beloved statement to me is the true one. So you have the option of restoring your properties or your captives, for I have delayed distributing them." The narrator added, Allah's apostle C had been waiting for them for more than 10 days on his return from Taif. When they realized that Allah's apostle would return to them only one of 2 things, they said, "We choose our captives." So Allah's apostle got up in the gathering of the Muslims, praised Allah as he deserved, and said, "Then after, these brethren of yours have come to you with repentance, and I see it proper to return their captives to them. So whoever amongst you likes to do that as a favor, then he can do it. And whoever of you wants to stick to his share till we pay him from the very first booty which Allah will give us, then he can do so." The people replied, "We agree to give up our shares willingly as a favor for Allah's apostle." Then Allah's apostle said, "We don't know who amongst you has agreed and who hasn't. Go back and your chiefs may tell us your opinion." So all of them returned, and their chiefs discussed the matter with them, and then they, that is their chiefs, came to Allah's apostle to tell him that they, that is the people, had given up their shares gladly and willingly. Volume 3, Book 38, number 504, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. I was accompanying the Prophet on a journey and was riding a slow camel that was lagging behind the others. The Prophet passed by me and asked, "Who is this?" I replied, "Jabir bin Abdullah." He asked, "What is the matter? Why are you late?" I replied, "I am riding a slow camel." He asked, "Do you have a stick?" I replied in the affirmative. He said, "Give it to me." When I gave it to him, he beat the camel and rebuked it. Then that camel surpassed the others thenceforth. The Prophet said, "Sell it to me." I replied, "It is a gift for you, O Allah's apostle." He said, "Sell it to me. I have bought it for 4 dinars, gold pieces, and you can keep on riding it till Medina." When we approached Medina, I started going towards my house. The Prophet said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I have married a widow." He said, "Why have you not married a virgin to fondle with each other?" I said, "My father died and left daughters, so I decided to marry a widow, an experienced woman, to look after them." He said, "Well done." When we reached Medina, Allah's apostle said, "O Bilal, pay him the price of the camel and give him extra money." Bilal gave me 4 dinars and 1 kirat extra. A sub-narrator said, Jabir added, "The extra kirat of Allah's apostle never parted from me." The kirat was always in Jabir bin Abdullah's purse. Volume 3, Book 38, number 505, narrated by Sahl bin Sa'd. A woman came to Allah's apostle and said, "O Allah's apostle, I want to give up myself to you." A man said, "Marry her to me." The Prophet said, "We agree to marry her to you with what you know of the Quran by heart." Volume 3, Book 38, number 505, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle deputed me to keep sadaqat al-fitr of Ramadan. A comer came and started taking handfuls of the foodstuff of the sadaqah, stealthily. I took hold of him and said, "By Allah, I will take you to Allah's apostle." He said, "I am needy and have many dependents, and I am in great need." I released him, and in the morning Allah's apostle asked me, "What did your prisoner do yesterday?" I said, "O Allah's apostle, the person complained of being needy and of having many dependents, so I pitied him and let him go." Allah's apostle said, "Indeed, he told you a lie and he will be coming again." I believed that he would show up again as Allah's apostle had told me that he would return, so I waited for him watchfully. When he showed up and started stealing handfuls of foodstuff, I caught hold of him again and said, "I will definitely take you to Allah's apostle." He said, "Leave me, for I am very needy and have many dependents. I promise I will not come back again." I pitied him and let him go. In the morning, Allah's apostle asked me, "What did your prisoner do?" I replied, "O Allah's apostle, he complained of his great need and of too many dependents, so I took pity on him and set him free." Allah's apostle said, "Verily, he told you a lie and he will return." I waited for him attentively for the 3rd time, and when he came and started stealing handfuls of the foodstuff, I caught hold of him and said, "I will surely take you to Allah's apostle, as it is the 3rd time you promise not to return, yet you break your promise and come." He said, "Forgive me, and I will teach you some words with which Allah will benefit you." I asked, "What are they?" He replied, "Whenever you go to bed, recite Ayat al-Kursi, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum, till you finish the whole verse. If you do so, Allah will appoint a guard for you who will stay with you, and no Satan will come near you till morning." So I released him. In the morning, Allah's apostle asked, "What did your prisoner do yesterday?" I replied, "He claimed that he would teach me some words by which Allah will benefit me, so I let him go." Allah's apostle asked, "What are they?" I replied, "He said to me, whenever you go to bed, recite Ayat al-Kursi from the beginning to the end, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum." He further said to me, "If you do so, Allah will appoint a guard for you who will stay with you, and no Satan will come near you till morning." Abu Huraira, or another sub-narrator, added that they, the companions, were very keen to do good deeds. The Prophet said, "He really spoke the truth, although he is an absolute liar. Do you know whom you are talking to, these 3 nights, O Abu Huraira?" Abu Huraira said no. He said it was Satan. Volume 3, Book 38, number 506, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Once Bilal brought barney, that is a kind of dates, to the Prophet, and the Prophet asked him, "From where have you brought these?" Bilal replied, "I had some inferior type of dates and exchanged 2 saws of it for 1 saw of barney dates in order to give it to the Prophet, to eat." Thereupon the Prophet said, "Beware, beware. This is definitely riba, usury. This is definitely riba, usury. Don't do so, but if you want to buy a superior kind of dates, sell the inferior dates for money, and then buy the superior kind of dates with that money." Volume 3, Book 38, number 507, narrated by Amr concerning the Waqf of Umar. It was not sinful of the trustee of the Waqf to eat or provide his friends from it, provided the trustee had no intention of collecting fortune for himself. Ibn Umar was the manager of the trust of Umar, and he used to give presents from it to those with whom he used to stay at Mecca. Volume 3, Book 38, number 508, narrated by Zayd bin Khalid and Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, O Unais, go to the wife of this man, and if she confesses that she has committed illegal sexual intercourse, then stone her to death. Volume 3, Book 38, number 509, narrated by Uqba bin al-Harith. When An-Nu'man or his son was brought in a state of drunkenness, Allah's apostle ordered all those who were present in the house to beat him. I was one of those who beat him. We beat him with shoes and palm leaf stalks. Volume 3, Book 38, number 510, narrated by Aisha. I twisted the garlands of the hadis, that is animals for sacrifice, of Allah's apostle with my own hands. Then Allah's apostle put them around their necks with his own hands and sent them with my father to Mecca. Nothing legal was regarded illegal for Allah's apostle till the animals were slaughtered. Volume 3, Book 38, number 511, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Abu Talha was the richest man in Medina amongst the Ansar, and Beruha, garden, was the most beloved of his property, and it was situated opposite the mosque of the Prophet. Allah's apostle used to enter it and drink from its sweet water. When the following divine verse were revealed, you will not attain righteousness till you spend in charity of the things you love. 3.93. Abu Talha got up in front of Allah's apostle and said, O Allah's apostle, Allah says in his book, you will not attain righteousness unless you spend in charity that which you love. And verily, the most beloved to me of my property is Beruha, garden. So I give it in charity and hope for its reward from Allah. O Allah's apostle, spend it wherever you like. Allah's apostle appreciated that and said, that is perishable wealth. That is perishable wealth. I have heard what you have said. I suggest you to distribute it among your relatives. Abu Talha said, I will do so, O Allah's apostle. So Abu Talha distributed it among his relatives and cousins. The sub-narrator, Malik, said, the Prophet said, that is a profitable wealth, instead of perishable wealth. Volume 3, Book 38, number 512, narrated by Abu Musa. The Prophet said, an honest treasurer who gives what he is ordered to give fully, perfectly, and willingly to the person to whom he is ordered to give is regarded as one of the two charitable persons.